Hello, good afternoon. Rangers Football Club, one of the most famous in Britain, has announced it's gone into administration following an unsuccessful legal bid by Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs to appoint its own administrators.
Well, the club's chairman has revealed it could face disputed tax bills and penalties of up to £75 million.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Rangers the Banter Years, episode 1. Last time round we had an introduction to this new series on the Terrace podcast, and now it's time to start delving into things, start delving into all the Banter Years moments, and of course for episode 1 we have to be joined by a resident Rangers fan, Euan Taylor. Euan, how's it going?
Hello, Craig. Yeah, it's obviously some would say the Banter Years have never finished, but yeah, we can at least cover when they started.
Yeah, so we're going to cover. So this episode is going to cover administration. It'll cover the big house must stay open. It'll cover we don't do walking away. But we'll begin, Euan, by just kind of painting a picture for what led up to Rangers going into administration on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, 2012. Basically, a whole lot of financial issues behind the scenes.
Yes.
led to Craig White taking over the club from David Murray, and then and things got worse, didn't they?
Yes, it was a very specific series of events which could only have happened in the way they happened, and that was pretty much the only way that a club like Rangers could have gone bust. Really. It was that specific set of events had to occur in that specific way, with loads of people doing very odd things, which led to. And yeah, I mean, basically what happened was David Murray lost control of his business interests, was forced to sell the club to the only person who was willing to pay Bank of Scotland out entirely, which no one would have done in a normal course, and that's why the bank were desperate to do it. So they sort of forced the sale through. The purchase was funded by the mortgaging of season tickets, the future season tickets, if you recall that, from Ticketus.
Yes. Which
is actually like an incompetent thing to do in Scots law, but they didn't realise that. So again, that should have you can't have a fixed charge over a floating asset or in Scots law, but they didn't realise that, and that allowed the whole thing to happen. The lawyers for Craig White lied about the source of funds. All these kind of things happened, which meant that Craig White could take over for £1. And then, yeah, obviously Rangers had their tax issues prior to Craig White taking over. Of course, there was the big tax case and there was the wee tax case, but there was also the just not paying any tax case, which is what Craig White did. So he just stopped paying tax of any description whatsoever the whole time he was Rangers manager, Rangers owner. So that was an interesting approach that he took, and yeah, probably what I always wonder is what would have happened if Rangers had got into the Champions League, for example, that season. So you remember Ali McCoist obviously took over as manager in that summer. There was various sort of murmurings over the course of the summer about Rangers transfer business not being, because at the time that the Rangers had been sort of operating under a very sort of strict policy by Bank of Scotland. They basically weren't allowed to spend a great deal of money, and remarkably that actually made Rangers better, I think, than not wasting loads of cash and having to deal with the squad they had sort of worked. But there was sort of a bit of excitement that Rangers actually might sign a few players this summer, having not really signed many in the year before, bar Nikita Jelic was almost like the only big signing in about 2 seasons. So there was a lot of thought that would happen. A lot of transfer targets slipped through the net. David Goodwillie being the most famous one. Not that was a disaster by any stretch. That was probably good that happened, certainly. But generally, it had Rangers defeated Malmo in the Champions League qualifier, and I think there's one further round they would have had to negotiate. Then obviously there would have been a decent influx of cash. Now, I have to suspect that cash may have found its way to Craig White's pockets rather than either the taxman or anywhere else that it could have gone. But just interesting if that would have delayed the inevitable, which was obviously going to come eventually under Craig White's ownership, that Rangers were going to go bust in some way or other. And yeah, that after a good start on the park that season, very good start.
Yeah.
And sort of forgotten a wee bit the Rangers. And at one point, I remember talking to my pals and saying, "Oh, maybe we could take like a tactical administration." You almost like, if you're on a night out and you think, "Oh, I'll just go and like
spit up."
go whitey the toilets and then it'll be all right as rain. Rangers could have done that and still won the league potentially. Because at one point we were about 10 points clear, I think, not far off. And it was the famous day when Celtic were 3-0 down to Kilmarnock.
Mm-hmm.
And came back. And then the same day Rangers dropped points to St Mirren. I think we conceded a last minute equaliser, if I remember correctly. I remember blaming Kyle Lafferty and Kirk Broadfoot both for that goal, whether that's accurate or not, I'd have to check. So that could have been obviously a sort of a 6 point or a significant swing anyway, and it wasn't. And from there, things unravelled on the park, and swiftly off the park, caught up and surpassed that, which took us to the Valentine's Day in 2012.
Do you? I would say it's a moment where everybody remembers where they were when they first heard it.
I remember exactly where I was. I was on a secondment to Sainsbury's Bank at the time, which is quite a grim. It was like during my traineeship as a solicitor, and I'd been posted out to this bank, and I was doing like this horrible admin task, and they didn't even have a desk for me, so I was basically in this like sort of makeshift cupboard, and I'd made myself like a desk basically of these like big iron mounted cardboard boxes, and I was doing one of the most boring tasks I've ever had to deal with in my whole professional career. It was absolutely horrendous, and that's where I was when I discovered that Rangers had gone into administration. Fair to say I did not do much more boring admin after that. It was it was an absolute shocker. I mean, it was obviously something was happening, clearly, but it was still a bit of a shock that happened, and then the way that even further unravelled from there was certainly not at that time would not have been expected.
So I remember I was working a shift in the Amber Rose. That was the Edinburgh City Centre bar, and we had throughout the day we always had Sky Sports News on most of the tellies, and just seeing it come up along the ticker. I can't remember whether I punched the air or something like that, but I did some sort of celebration, like hands up, like yes, it's happening, it's actually happening. And for Rangers fans listening to this, probably not going to appreciate that, but it's just the reason why I was so excited and happy is because I thought what would happen did actually happen, which is that Scottish football, at the very top, obviously it didn't. It got less competitive because Celtic there was one season where Aberdeen were bigged up as title contenders, and looking back now, the league was still done in March. But every season Celtic cakewalked to the title. But in terms of the cup competitions, Celtic, I think Celtic during that period kind of just drifted a bit. And they lost a number of cup games that they certainly haven't done in the years since Rangers came back to the top flight. And Rangers were obviously severely weakened as well, so they were routinely getting knocked out of cup competitions by other teams. I'm sure we'll get to some of those when we're doing more episodes of this series. Yes. So, and also there's about to be people who will be like, you wouldn't say that if it was. Yeah, I would definitely say the same if it was Celtic. Just wanted one of the big two teams that I'd hated my entire football supporting life, who beat us all the time, who won all the trophies. One of they two just being on their knees was tremendous. It was absolutely tremendous.
Yes, I mean it wasn't, but I can appreciate that.
You can appreciate where a fan of a Diddy club is coming from.
Exactly. I could understand it from that perspective. But I mean, it was yeah, and again, I mean, the way that everything transpired from there was, again, the circumstance in that there was the big tax bill was the crucial factor and all that, because that was not something that could be settled. So again, that was a completely different scenario to any other club that's ever gone into administration in Scotland that that wasn't really understood, and it was the most complicated situation. The fan base didn't get it. A lot of the stuff that the fans did, like I remember the Rangers fans fighting fund, and it was like to try to pay like bills as they fell due. It's like, what are you doing? Like, say, if the fans are trying to do something, it should be like obviously just money to like buy the club potentially. But there's loads of sort of misguided and there were misguided ideas that certainly the administrators had their own views, and that has been the subject of quite a lot of police and other illegal attention. So we won't talk about that. But yeah, it was all quite interesting how it transpired from there. But yeah, the initial fan reaction, I mean, obviously people got very sort of het up about it, and yeah, that was when your man outside Ibrox
sadly passed away in 2017. But George Barnett.
The league's gone and that's it. Right, the bottom line is the big house must stay open. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, well, the now iconic quote. There was a couple of iconic ones. We'll get. I've mentioned them at the top, but yeah, the worth delving into. The big house must stay open. He does say house. Everybody quotes it as the big house. He doesn't say house. He says house. This is kind of like Will Smith in Independence Day, where everybody he says welcome to Earth, and he doesn't. Yeah. He says welcome to Earth.
Indeed. So yeah, there was that, and Alan McCoist's "We Don't Do Walking Away."
Couple of weeks, have you thought about walking away from this?
Not at all, absolutely not at all. This is my club, the same as it is thousands and thousands of Rangers supporters, and we don't do walking away.
Until which is I'd say obviously quite ironic, because the vast majority of the Rangers support walks away at 75 minutes at every home game, but and it continues to do so. But I did see someone the other day apparently shouted as the left when Rangers were getting beat by St Mirren in the Philippe Collett's last game, apparently shouting, "I don't even go use the fucking subway," as he left it. 175 minutes or so. Fair play. But yeah, generally speaking, I mean, and the reaction to the fans, there was obviously a lot of passion. And
well, the first guy on the BBC, like, so the George appeared on a later showing, because he turned up in the it was kind of starting to get a bit dusky, so it was kind of getting into the evening. But obviously they'd interviewed fans earlier in the day outside of Ibrox, and the first one on the BBC one, he starts crying at the end of it.
Yeah,
worried sick. It's a big embarrassment to the club. I think Mr. Murray and Mr. Bain have got a lot to answer for. I was just saying to someone else, it's not just the history of the club. It's the history of families that come here together.
Are you particularly upset?
Yeah. I mean, and there was it was just all. It really needed someone to rally around that also had a bit of an idea, and and then McCoist was there, but he was trying to manage the team at the time, and there should have been there should have really been a figure that took a step away from separate from the club to say, right, and like Walter Smith and others sort of tried too late really to do that, but there should have been someone like that actually got the whole fan base united. But the problem was that as most fan bases are, it was kind of fractured always, and there's always people always thought the other fan groups and so on had agendas or whatever, and it was just, again, that was another one of these factors that had that not been the case, and had there been a bit more of a united front, then it wouldn't have necessarily prevented what happening, but it would have been prevented what happened after after administration and liquidation and so on, after that, you would have been in a better place. But as it was, what happened. Which was again just a ridiculous series of events which led to it.
Yeah, and then after administration, and there is that kind of rallying for the fans in terms of everybody comes out to support the club. There's a banner that says we don't do walking away. You play Kilmarnock at home, and you lose 1-0.
Yes.
To a Dean Shields goal. Dean Shields.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah. I think Ian Black scored against Rangers around about this time also.
Yes, because Hearts defeated Rangers at Ibrox around about this time as well, coming back from a goal down, and Ian Black scored a belter.
Yeah. Yeah, so another two very unfortunate events that led to Rangers signing two players maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. Dean Shields was probably, he was more or less right. Ian Black, not so much. But yeah, both pitched up at Ibrox the following season. And yeah, I mean, on the park, obviously results became quite mixed. There was the points deduction, so the title race was over straight away. Remember Rangers signed Mervan Selic. Remember him? And then he left after like 2 weeks. We'd been signed in the January window. The Rangers got to administration. He was straight back out the door. And yeah, it just became clear that things weren't going great. I mean, I really remember one of my favourite Rangers games was during this period was the game, the Old Firm game at Ibrox when Celtic could have won the league at Ibrox.
Yeah, and Rangers won 3-2.
Sonny Luka scored.
There was a couple of late Celtic goals, wasn't there? In that game? Aye, because otherwise
it
could have been like it could have been like a DVD game, but instead you just won by a goal at home.
Yeah, it was like and it became really, because even a draw would have been enough, I think, to avoid disaster. Because that would have been, because it wasn't, well, it was a while after, I suppose, but it was still like the Rangers winning the league at Parkhead was still like quite a formational memory for I think a lot of people, and that would have, it's obviously a part. They thought they could maybe do that, but no. So that was a bright spot on the park. But as was actually Sonny Luka in general, he was really good during that whole period. But yeah, it just became clearer as the season was going on, and there were different parties that sort of expressed interest, and there was Bill Miller won the thanks but no Yanks, which that policy has been reversed now. Quite sporadically. Yes, please, Americans, come in and save us. But yeah, that because his whole plan was to sort of go into liquidation, and that was the main reason that and ultimately that's obviously what ended up happening. And yeah, there was various sort of other parties. I think Graham Souness was involved in one of the takeover plans, but then almost out of nowhere, Mr. Charles Green appeared. And a lot of people say these things quite often, like, you couldn't write it, and it's like something that you obviously could write. Like someone scores a last minute winner on their first game back after a long injury or something like that. It's actually exactly what you would write. I would say the one thing about this whole Rangers story that you just wouldn't write is that the two main architects of Rangers' downfall surnames are Green and White. I mean, it's just way too. It's like way too on the nose. Like he would write it, you could write it and think, no, that's a bit embarrassing. That's a bit too much. Like, and any editor would say, nah, I mean, come on, that's way too much. But here we are. That is what happened. And yeah, so that was, and things really sort of off the park. I don't know if you could say they went from bad to worse, but certainly on the park they did. And yeah, that really shouldn't have happened. And Rangers could have been in a far healthier position coming back through the leagues than they were if it hadn't been for who the club ended up getting sold to, which was Charles Green and his cronies. So yeah, it was a pretty grim time to be a Rangers fan. Obviously, that's another thing that normally I would think with downfalls of a club like this is very gradual. And comes after a sustained period of being like shit on the park. And this was Rangers won the league the 3 seasons before and had been were very much in contention to win the league that season up until sort of about the turn of the year. And so the downfall was so swift. Now, obviously, there had been a lot going on in the background all the time, and it wasn't completely out of the blue that Rangers had financial trouble. But it's not a usual situation that a club is very successful and then all of a sudden just goes like pop. And that was obviously the case here. So it was a real turnaround. I remember being at Rugby Park when Rangers won the league the season before, Walter Smith's last game. Went 3-0 up after like 7 minutes, and then less than 12 months later, it's just a complete disaster zone. And you're working out how you're going to like field the team against Brecon in the Challenge Cup.
Yes, and we'll get to that next time around. Rangers start to life in League 2 of Scottish football, or the 3rd Division as it was still known at the time. But for now,
Indeed.
Euan, thank you very much for joining me.
That's Craig.
And thank you to everybody for listening and watching and your continued support of the podcast. We will talk to you again soon. Goodbye.